Hey folks, this is a new video. So in this case we are going to talk about cache, and the cache is in the JavaScript layer. So we are going to be persisting some data in our memory in a data structure from JavaScript, and this is with the intention that in some cases we know that the data is not going to change in a certain period of time. For example, in this case we are going to consume the data from the openware map API, and we know that the weather probably is not changing the next 10 seconds, or we can define some time, like for example 10 minutes or so. And this is also helpful when we are using open APIs, and these open APIs normally have some limitations, like for example certain amount of requests per second per minute, and this is really helpful if we are having a lot of users, so we can prevent all these requests or unnecessary requests from happening. So in this case, the regular implementation, it's consuming the API and then updating the HTML with the data that we get. So let me show you for London, for example, and this does the request on Blur, and we have here the request, and we have the data from as a JSON response, and then we're just appending that data in here. So if you see, let's look for Berlin, and then every time that we do on Blur, this is going to request data. So we want this to be prevented for a certain amount of time that we are going to define. So first of all, let me show you guys how the cache data structure is going to be. So it's going to be an object, and then in here inside the object we're going to have the name of each city, and then for city we're going to have the metadata, and then in as well we are going to have the time, cache time. And then the cache time is going to be a timestamp, for example like this, and we are going to compare if now no, if cache time is lower than now, then we are going to perform a request. Otherwise, we are going to return the data from the cache object that we already have populated. So let's continue. So as I mentioned before, we are going to need a cache time variable, which is going to be the amount of milliseconds that we define. In this case, let's proceed with 10,000 milliseconds, which is 10 seconds, so we can see the changes. We're going to have a data structure empty because we're going to be dynamically adding the data in here. We also need to initialize a variable for the cache timer, which is going to start at 0, so the first time is always in here. It's going to be the condition is going to be met. And then let's create a function to get the cache timer, which is going to be updating the new cache timer and returning the cache timer in case it is needed. Okay, so let's create another function. This is going to receive the timer that we specify from the call, and then let's define now as a variable. So this is only a new object of date, and then we get the timestamp from the current creation of the object. So as I mentioned before, if cache timer is lower than now plus the time that we are passing, then we are going to update cache timer. That's going to be equals to now plus time, and at the end we are going to return only cache timer. So as I mentioned before, in this function we're going to get the cache timer and also return the cache timer in case in any case. So if the cache timer is not lower than now plus time, then we just return the cache timer. And then let's okay, I didn't mention this before, but in here I have the desired behavior, which is going to be like a wrapper of the function. The fetch weather info is going to be fetched with cache. We specify the city name, and also we are going to specify the amount of time that we want to persist the data for. Okay, so let's create the function fetch with cache. This is going to be an async function, and it's going to receive the city name, as we said, and the time. Okay, so we are going to have the now and post new date, same as before. And then in here we are going to have if there is no cache for the current city name, or the cache in the city name which is going to be the cache timer, is lower than now, then we are going to perform the regular request. So in this case it's going to be fetch weather info, and in here we only pass the city name. Okay, so we need to save this in the cache. So it's going to be cache, and then we are going to save it in the city, as I mentioned before, city name, and let's await for it. Okay, so in this case, if the cache doesn't exist in our current data structure, or if the cache timer has already expired, which is lower than the now date, we are going to perform the fetch, and then we are going to save it in here. So at the end, we just need to return the cache city name, because either way, if we there's an error in here, typo. Either way, if we already have the data, we have it in the object, or we are going to assign it, so we just return it. So let's see. Oh, I need to get the cache timer. Let's see. Yeah, we haven't updated here the cache timer. So cache in city name cache timer is going to be equals to get cache timer. Then we are going to pass the time here. So let's see what else. Yeah, let's try it out. So let's cut this and then paste it in here. So now we have our fetch with cache. We are passing the city name and the amount. In this case I have it as a const, but you can send it here. So we fetch cache, and then yeah, let's try it. Let's try. So let's clean here, look for London. Okay, we fetch, and then Berlin we fetch. Then for London we should not fetch because 10 seconds hasn't been passed. So we are getting the data from the data structure. So let's console log our data structure after each blur cache to see how it looks. Okay, London, and then China, then London again. Okay, in here we are seeing how the data structure looks like. As I mentioned before, we have one object for each city, and then inside that object we have the metadata plus the cache timer, which is the time span that we define, and we can modify this time span to be whatever. So in this case, let's do it for milliseconds, which is going to be a second. So this is going to be pretty quick, and we're not going to have enough time to do a different request. So China and then London. So if you see, the time expires really fast, so we can add a couple of zeros in here, and then this is going to give us more time. So depending on your requirements, you can define the cache that you want in here, and the implementation is pretty much the same. So you can have an object, and if you have more complex data, like for example in this case we have an issue. Why? Because if I do Russia lowercase, this is going to do a request even though I have already stored the data for that. So how can we prevent this issue? So we just do city name. Okay, we can do city name or create another variable, but I think the best way to do it is to lowercase. In this case is not the ideal solution, because we are modifying the object when we are passing it as an argument, so this is not like the best way, but it's the shortest now. So let's see, now we have London, and if you see here we have London lowercase, so it doesn't matter if I do it with lowercase now, because it's going to be the same. So this is gotten from the cache, or if I do like mixing, it's going to be gotten from the cache as well. So this is pretty much it. I hope this helped you guys implementing some cache in your data structures, in your API's consumptions. And if you have any questions, let me know. There are other ways of implementing the cache. In this case, there is only one variable, which is the city name. But for example, for complex data structure or combination of the arguments as well, you can serialize and then generate a cache from that, and then your cache is going to be your key to persist your hash is going to be your key to persist your cache. Thank you guys. Thanks for listening and watching. See you next time.